Sergeant Robert Bales, most commonly known as our Bobby in his hometown, was recently arrested with the allegations that he had in fact been the sergeant that shot and killed 17 Afghani civilians. And with this in mind, we have to question exactly where the mission in Afghanistan has gone. Has it turned from a war on terror to a war on Afghani civilians? CNN begs this same question on March 20th, 2012, when it says that we must keep in mind the fact that we are in Afghanistan not to battle the Afghani people, but to help them get rid of insurgents and terrorists within their own country. And with that, we also have to beg the question of how will the United States solve Afghanistan? We can see that the answer is threefold. It comes in a three-step plan. First, we must do the unthinkable and reconcile with the Taliban. Then, we must go forth and encourage our allies to stay involved in Afghanistan before finally solving it all by having peace talks with the Afghani government. But first, we must do this unthinkable task of reconciling with the Taliban. Now, this may seem like an astoundingly bad idea. However, the Taliban is willing to negotiate with us in order to motivate the rest of the terrorist groups to push for peace in the region. When we look first to the Toronto Star on February 1st, 2012, we can see that the U.S. sees a political settlement with the Taliban as key to ending the war, which causes them to push President Hamid Karzai to push for these settlements with the Taliban, which in the end will in fact solve Afghanistan, answering our question for today. But what's further, we can look to The Guardian on March 1st, 2012, which points to Mullah Omar, who is the Taliban supreme cleric, who emphasizes that the insurgents mean no harm to civilians, noting that negotiation will help end the war on the whole, and will, in fact, cause the Taliban to have less restrictions in negotiating with the United States. But finally, we can look to Al Jazeera on March 20th, 2012, which notes especially that the Taliban has been considering opening an office in Qatar in an effort to open up peace negotiations, not only with the United States, but also with the Afghani government. And essentially, what this means is that the Taliban, being a key component in this war, seeing as they were one of the initial things we went into the war for, are willing to negotiate to help us get out of this war. And thus, we can see a lot of solvency in that. But what's further is once we have reconciled with the Taliban, we must go forth and encourage our allies to stay involved within Afghanistan. In fact, our allies have become very weary of this war. Looking to France in January, as the BBC points out on March 20th, France pulled out all of their soldiers in training within Afghanistan, simply because they did not see it as being worth it. With losing 4 soldiers in the matter of a month, they simply decided it wasn't worth the fight. But now, France is reconsidering and wants to go back in and help to end this war on terror, as the New York Times points out on March 16th. And with this reconsideration, allies like France will be able to help us to go forth and solve Afghanistan. And with this solvency, we can see that a lot of peace will come into play within the Middle East. Now, with Afghanistan being one of the most horrific combat zones within the Middle East, we have to look especially to the Sydney Morning Herald on March 10th, 2012, which notes that allies against terrorism in Afghanistan have to work together to fix the problems. But we have to keep in mind the initial mission of Afghanistan, which was to stop terrorism and not the Afghani people. And with many anti-Islamist sentiments within areas like France, we can see that this isn't going to be an easy task for us. And by simply encouraging our allies to keep our initial mission in mind, we can solve Afghanistan by not only reconciling with the Taliban, but also going forth and encouraging them to stay involved. But once we've done both of these things, we have to do the final thing, which may not seem necessary to all of you, but we have to encourage peace talks with the Afghani government, simply because there is a lot of anti-American sentiment within their government itself. And with this anti-American sentiment could come a lot more conflict in years to come. But when we look to the Washington Post on March 16, 2012, we can see that Mr. Obama, in a 20-minute phone call with Karzai, confirmed that in the endgame, we're all on the same side. We all simply want peace with no terrorism within the region. And with this idea of us all being on the same side, there's no point in us having sentiments against each other. In fact, it's completely nonsensical for us to not trust each other or not to work together. And so we must negotiate through these peace talks because they are the most diplomatic way possible for us to go through with this. So when we look to the Chicago Tribune, on March 18, 2012, we can look to Secretary of State Hillary Rodham Clinton, who says that peace talks will be necessary with the withdrawal of troops. So in the endgame, we can see that it is absolutely mandatory that we not only withdraw all of our troops after proceeding with reconciling with the Taliban and also going through and encouraging our allies to stay in this zone, but also through peace talks with the Afghani government. So today, we've answered the question of how will the United States solve Afghanistan? We've answered this with a threefold answer. First, they must reconcile with the Taliban. Then, they must go forth and encourage their allies to stay within the region and fight terrorism before finally negotiating peace talks with the Afghani government. And overall, we can avoid a situation like Robert Bales simply by listening to the Afghani government and focusing on this initial plan which we had within the zone to fight terrorism, not to fight the Afghani people, because that's what we're in Afghanistan for. And overall, it's going to help us in the long run simply to make our mission very clear to the Afghani people and to eliminate all anti-American sentiment which has manifested itself.